You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to Straight to the Extra Point, your nugget source for all news, draft coverage, free agency, weekly game analysis, game day betting picks, and fantasy football updates regarding the National Football League. Here's your hosts, Brandon Miklos and Miklos McMaster.
Welcome back, football fans, to part 2 of our 2021 NFL Draft Recap Show. This is our NFC portion right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your May 13th, 2021 edition. Your source North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, right here in the beautiful Niagara region. Find us on social media for updates and giveaways by following the podcast on Twitter at ArmchairGMPod, as well as liking us on Facebook and Instagram. You can listen to us on many platforms, including Spreaker.com and the free Spreaker app, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer. Wherever you're getting your podcasts at, you can find it by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. And lastly, our beautiful user-friendly website, ArmchairGMSports.com, for all things regarding the network, including articles, podcast episodes, sponsors, and contributors. Everything's on there for you guys. Please go and check that out as well. We have a brand new mobile version of our website, more friendly for those using your mobile devices. Please give us a like and smash that subscribe button on whatever platform you listen to us right now. As always, I'm one of your hosts of Straight to the Extra Point. My name is Brandon Miklos. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13_AGM with a Canadian Z. And as always, I'm joined on the NFL portion of the network by my good friend and aspiring medical professional. He is Miklos McMaster. You can follow him on Twitter at Miklos_McMaster. Miklos, we're back for part 2 of our draft recap. AFC portion yesterday. Today, fired up to talk about the NFC side of things.
Oh, Coach, I am so fired up for part 2. Let's get it going.
Yep, so with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the NFC draft recap. And again, we're going to go division by division here, and starting off with the East Division. So first segment on today's show is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy, the fastest growing fantasy sports platform for the casual fan. Pick over-unders of their top-tier athletes for given sports. Simple to navigate and easy concept for those getting into online betting with generous payouts. Use the code AGM Sports when you sign up to receive an instant price match bonus of up to $50 of your first deposit of at least $20 or more. Again, that's Thrive Fantasy app or thrivefantasy.com. So, Miklos, talking about the NFC here, we kind of discussed that the kind of balance of power has kind of shifted from the NFC the last couple of years over to the AFC, with a lot of good young quarterbacks going into that conference, and the NFC kind of having the grizzled veterans now and the guys that are kind of trying to have a couple more kicks at the can here. Obviously, Tampa Bay winning it last year, getting Tom Brady over from the AFC, but it just seems like the NFC, now Drew Brees retiring, it just seems like the NFC is kind of, they're going through a transition phase, and we have a lot of elite quarterbacks that are either at the end or getting to the end of their career here.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem like there is some more parity now than there has been in the past, and I think it's more to do with the AFC just getting more competitive. In the past, as I mentioned in our first episode, in the AFC there was maybe 2-3 teams that were perpetually good, and everyone else was just kind of some version of garbage for a long time. And now, much like how the NFC has been in the past, where there was always 1 or 2 maybe premier teams, but constantly everyone was competing for those playoff spots, and that's how it looks like the AFC is going to be moving forward.
Yep, so the NFC will see if this draft can help them build back up here and be turning back into a competitive conference as a whole here. So we start off with the NFC East, talking about competition. This division definitely was competitive, but in all the wrong ways, as the Washington football team won this division with a 7-9 record last year. Just an atrocious division, the laughingstock of the NFL. Whatever team won this division was going to host a playoff game. It was Washington. They ended up playing Tampa Bay in the first round, and Tampa Bay went on to win the Super Bowl. But with that said, we'll start off with the Dallas Cowboys here, Miklos, everyone's favorite to talk about, and America's team. the Dallas Cowboys, and of course we've got some Dallas Cowboys input, as we always do on our draft recap shows that I should mention before I get into it. Always much appreciated for your input on your favorite team. So if you'd like to contribute next year, make sure you're looking for our draft recap stuff, and send me a message if you're interested in having your thoughts read on the air. So with the Dallas Cowboys here, and I'm pulling it up right now. First off, from Chris Cardamone, says there was no secret coming into the 2021 draft that the Cowboys needed cornerbacks. With Carolina and Denver both selecting J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, respectively, it forced Dallas to trade down for talented Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons. Cowboys took a highly talented but troubled corner in round 2, Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky, to hopefully band-aid their secondary. In round 3, they reached on a 6'4 corner where they let measurements overtake their pick there and dictate that. The Josh Ball round 4 pick left the fan base perplexed. Ball has had a history of domestic violence dating back to his time at FSU. Perhaps my favorite day 2 pick, and a consensus among Cowboys Twitter, was linebacker Jabril Cox from LSU. High character, high athletic linebacker who can cover and help form a formidable duo with Parsons going forward at linebacker, putting Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch on the hot seat. All in all, I thought the Cowboys draft was meh, but they did address some needs on the defensive side of the ball. I would give them a B. It will take a few years to see truly how this young defense performs. Thank you very much for that, Chris. And lastly, Joe Corso says, first things first, I'm sickened by the fact that the Dallas Cowboys allowed a trade with the Eagles to move up and get Devontae Smith. That did not make me happy. To follow that up, besides Parsons, which was a huge pick, and Kelvin Joseph, I was not thrilled with Dallas's draft this year. It was heavily focused on defense, which was needed, but I don't think it was as impactful as it could have been. I am excited to see Simi Fecco tear up the O, and Josh Ball is a good addition. Healthy offensive line will be coming back this season. All in all, still excited, and hashtag Cowboys Nation baby. So thank you to Chris and Joe for your thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys. Miklos, what are your thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys draft? Biggest needs: tight end, defensive tackle, cornerback, safety, and inside linebacker.
Yeah, I think as was mentioned in Jamie's comments, the run on corners kind of put the Cowboys in a tough spot, so they take the best linebacker available. And I mean, given Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith's injury history and lack of availability over the past couple of years, it makes sense to add the most talented linebacker in the draft to bolster their defense. And they add Kelvin Joseph as well to bolster their secondary, which really needed a lot of help last year. And that was their biggest need is defense. And they continued that trend, adding more defensive players. Jabril Cox, I think, was a great pick in the 4th round. Solid LSU linebacker to add to their linebacker core that also contains, according to our lads, Keanu O'Neal is slotted in at linebacker for them, which is pretty interesting, but another guy with serious injury concerns. And just the Josh Ball thing, this has got to be the one biggest stain on the NFL and recent times. Like, their handling of these domestic abuse situations has been up and down and not great. And I am not fully aware of Josh Ball's full story and everything going on there, but I am a firm believer that, you do something like this and then you say, I don't know if he paid his time or whatever, but other people in the past who are now in the NFL have paid their time. But despite that, I agree it shouldn't cripple you for life that you never get another opportunity again making a mistake like this. But I do believe that you don't get the privilege of playing in the NFL if you do something like this. I don't know why the Cowboys drafted him, even though they overlooked that, but I really think if you're someone who that's a mistake that, should cost you the opportunity to play in the highest level and most privileged level of football that exists in the world. You can go do any other job that you want, but you shouldn't get the opportunity to play in the NFL. That's my 2 cents on that. But overall, I think the draft was really solid, filling in a lot of defensive needs. And I'm also going to stick with Jamie's evaluation, give them a solid B on this draft.
It was actually Jamie's brother, Chris.
Chris, sorry.
Yeah. It's easy to get them mixed up, both good guys. But with that said, you're going to give them a B as well. And the thing with Dallas is that I feel like they always take on those kind of projects and those guys that have had, checkered past and kind of, had to have a second chance, and Dallas is that team to give them their second chance. It seems like Jerry Jones overlooks that, and if they're a good enough player, they can kind of, get past that and become successful NFL players again. It just seems like Dallas takes more risks on those guys than maybe other franchises do.
Yeah, I'm fine with taking a risk on a guy with maybe some character concerns, some issues like Randy Gregory, for example. But I just think for that one particular issue, I just don't think those guys should be given that shot in the NFL. I mean, I feel like you got to draw the line somewhere, and that's definitely something that if you make that mistake, sorry, you don't get to play in the NFL anymore.
Yeah, we've seen it swept under the rug too many times in this league, but that's a discussion for another day. Micah Parsons, also a guy that kind of rubbed some teams the wrong way, might have, as talented as he is. There were some concerns there character-wise, but obviously a solid pick. They trade down. The Eagles trade up to get Devontae Smith, and they give up a third-round pick to move up 2 slots. The Cowboys pick up an extra third here to move down and take the best linebacker available in Micah Parsons. So a very solid linebacker room already, but with some injury concerns, it looks like it's going to be, if there's one good thing on Dallas's defense, it's definitely their linebacking core, because that looks to be very, very solid as they continue to try to build back up this defense, which obviously doesn't have a lot going for it right now, and the area of concern that they really needed going into the draft. And they definitely addressed that, Miklos. I mean, they took a linebacker, corner, D-tackle, D-end, corner, inside linebacker. Their first offensive player wasn't until the 4th round with Josh Ball, like we had mentioned, the offensive tackle, and then Simi Fecco, the wide receiver from Stanford. It definitely looked like they knew that defense was their biggest need in this draft, and they went there. They had a ton of picks here. They had 2 extra thirds, an extra 4th, an extra 6, so they had a plethora of draft picks. So for me, I'm going to give the Dallas Cowboys, and because they addressed their biggest need, which was everything under the sun as far as defense, I'm going to give them a B+ here, Miklos. And again, they had a high grade from us last year. I believe they were in our top 3 best drafts last year as far as grades go. So for me, again, they're getting another solid grade here as they try to build back up this defense. We know what their offense can be with Dak Prescott back and all the key weapons that he has up there, but they're definitely going to need that O-line to come back healthy, because that Washington front 4 is going to be fierce coming at them this year twice a year. So I'm going to give Dallas a B+, and I believe you said a B, right?
Correct.
Okay, so B for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see how those picks work out for them, and if those allegations and kind of stuff that can go against players can work out for a couple of these guys that they had drafted, like Miklos had mentioned. So we'll move on here to the next team in the NFC East, and that is the New York Football Giants. And of course, we have Giants thoughts from, firstly, we'll start off with my buddy Josh, a.k.a. the Big Red Ragu from down there, where he lives in the United States. He lives in Patriot land, but is a New York Giants fan, so at least he has bragging rights on the Patriots fans down there for beating them twice in the Super Bowl. So thank you very much, Josh, for this. He says, first off, thanks for taking the time to read and share my opinion on this matter. Overall, I was very pleased with the Giants draft this year. I didn't love the way that the draft started for us, but I did receive a nice package to move down to 9 spots with the Bears. However, to follow that up by taking the undersized specialist, quote-unquote, in Kadarius Toney for me was tremendously underwhelming. I've heard nothing but positive reviews on this pick, but it just hasn't jived well with me. I'm concerned with Barkley being healthy and signing of Golladay, not to mention the other compliments at Jones' disposal that Toney won't receive the reps that you'd want from a guy being taken in that spot. I hope I'm way off base with that assessment. Next up, Azeez Ojulari, who I absolutely love the pick in this spot. If a guy can stay healthy and on the field, he would have been my guy to take at 20. He, too, is also undersized, but really excelled coming off the edge for the Bulldogs defense. I'm very excited about this pick. Third, we land Aaron Robinson. Love that pick as well. Struggled in coverage and tackling at times, but has tremendous size and physical capabilities as a slot corner. Our secondary was solid last year, but adding depth is never something you can go wrong with. Last 3 picks summed up into one. All seem to be nice depth pieces added to our roster. Linebackers should be able to compete for playing time immediately based off our linebacking core. Not not being the strongest and most experienced. Gary Britwell can be a nice addition early in the season as Barkley makes his way back from an ACL tear. He showed a great ability to shred tackles in his limited time carrying the ball in college. Rodarius Williams was a bit of a question mark for me with our last selection, but he showed the ability to remain on the field every game in his career at Oklahoma State. So I wouldn't expect him to see a lot of playing time right away unless Jackson or Bradbury fall prey to an injury. I really look forward to seeing the impact in this class can have on the immediate roster of the Giants, which showed a lot of promise at the end of the season. Thanks again for reading, guys. So thank you very much, Josh, for that. And last but not least, Harry McMaster, Miklos's brother and wide receiver for the Edmonton football team of the CFL. And he was on our mock draft show with me when Miklos was away. He says, I think the two storylines from here for the Giants are, one, Gettleman isn't scared, no trade back in all his years as a GM, and this year he trades back on the first two picks and trades up in the third. An extra first-rounder is big time from the Bears. No O-line added. Gettleman had a quote where he said, I guess the Giants have more confidence in our O-line than you because the fans and the media do. I like the O-line we got last year, and we get Solder back, but it's been an issue for so long I don't think you can overinvest. Outside of that, unsure about Kadarius Toney. Looks like a slower Tyreek Hill. Pairing with Ojulari with another Georgia boy and Lorenzo Carter is exciting. Two solid-looking corners, and all of a sudden the secondary that's been killed by jokers such as Eli Apple, DeAndre Baker, and Janoris Jenkins could be the strongest unit around. I'm happy. Last note, J.C. Horn to the Panthers mic drop, because he did call J.C. Horn going to the Carolina Panthers at 8th overall in our mock draft. So thank you very much to Josh and Harry on their thoughts on the New York Football Giants. Miklos, a lot of stuff to dissect there, so we can just basically go through it real quick with the Giants. What do you think that about their draft? Their biggest needs were outside linebacker, center, offensive guard, inside linebacker, and tackle.
Yeah, I do think, like they mentioned, I think the Kadarius Toney pick was surprising. I think trading back was great for them. They got lots of draft capital out of that, and then they still had an opportunity at lots of talented wide receivers, and I just thought there was other options that made more sense if they wanted to go with a wide receiver. I mean, they already massively upgraded their wide receiving room with bringing in Kenny Golladay in the offseason. So I think that was a little bit strange considering the options available. I think their second-round draft pick, though, in Azeez Ojulari, was a dynamite pick. He's already slotted in to start and is going to help them out with the pass rush right off the hop. And so the rest overall, I think Aaron Robinson as well is a great pick. And they added some good depth players. So other than the first pick, which is a bit of a head-scratcher, I think it was a solid draft for the Giants, especially given the draft capital that they picked up for trading back.
Yeah, I think trading back was very smart for the Giants and not kind of reaching like they had in past years where they kind of could have got a guy later on, but they took him in the spot that they were at instead of regaining that draft capital. And after Devontae Smith went right in front of them when Dallas traded with Philadelphia, and that kind of whole division there picking all in order there this year was pretty interesting. They basically knew that with Devontae Smith not available, they should just trade back and get Kadarius Toney at number 20. I think it was a very, very smart move for the Giants, picking up that extra first, like you mentioned. And I think Azeez Ojulari, to me, is a steal of the draft in the second round, 18th pick. Just, I can't believe that guy fell to the 18th pick in the second round, Miklos. Just, that guy should have been a first-round pick for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, and good for the Giants. I mean, it happens every year. We always see guys who, for whatever reason, end up falling way farther than anyone else thought. But, lots of teams drafting for need. And it doesn't appear that anyone needed him until the Giants came calling. So good for the Giants, and hopefully Azeez can make these teams that passed on him pay.
I really thought they were going to take Kwity Paye. Was the guy that I had kind of slotted in for them, even at 11, even moving back to 20. I thought that might have been the pick, but again, not the sexiest pick in the world. But they end up getting Kadarius Toney and Azeez Ojulari and a couple other depth pieces to kind of fill out their roster with. Again, when the Giants went down, they kind of realized that they needed a lot more depth on the roster. And I think they filled that here. So what is your draft grade for the New York Giants this year, Miklos?
Just like the Cowboys, I think a solid B.
All right. I'm going to give them a B as well. I think they did a good enough job of filling some of the positions. And again, stealing Azeez Ojulari in the second round I think was huge. So I'm going to give the Giants a B here, and we'll see how they continue to progress here. I think they're on the way up in this division, but we'll have to wait and see the play on the field. Joe Judge has done a good job over there so far. We'll move on here to the Philadelphia Eagles, and oh boy, Miklos, I can't believe this team is 3 years removed from a Super Bowl, because this team just was decimated from top to bottom. Carson Wentz is gone. Nick Foles is gone. Their head coach Doug Peterson is gone. Frank Reich is gone. There's a lot of new things in Philadelphia, including their new head coach with Nick Sirianni, and he seemed like a deer in the headlights in his opening press conference. But the Philadelphia Eagles definitely needed a lot of help here. And before we go any further, I got some Philadelphia Eagles thoughts here. First, from our friend Spencer Kirky. He says, I was really happy with our draft this year, although I think a lot of teams are happy with their draft. We addressed a huge need on our team in round one, and I can't miss prospect in Devontae Smith. Maybe not our biggest positional need, but could help everywhere, and there is a Bama connection between Hurts and Smith now. Round two, we picked up an interior lineman who's had injury history, but need bodies on an ever-injured offensive line, so why not bring in a guy who's talented but gets injured? Perfect fit. Round three, we get a defensive end for depth reasons. Don't know much about the guy, but I do know that we have expiring contracts next season and lost defensive lineman this offseason. Day three, we finally picked a cornerback. Fired up to see him misused and torched for 100-plus games weekly. Okay. Overall, draft grade B+. He's happy with it because we waited so long to get corner help. Thank you, Spencer, for that. And lastly, Mark Ferrante, who's a season ticket holder for the Philadelphia Eagles down where he lives. So he has a thought that Howie Roseman rolled the dice once again. Weeks before the draft, the Dolphins and Roseman made a deal which had the Eagles trade back to the number 12 pick, albeit by a polarizing move against Birds fans. The Eagles snatched up an extra first pick in next year's draft. On draft night, the Eagles proceeded to make a trade with the Cowboys to move up to the selection 10, leapfrogging the Giants in order to take Heisman winner Devontae Smith from Alabama. Smith offers a lot to the Eagles come week one. Given how awful the Eagles' wide receivers have been the last few years, Smith is immediately Hurts' number one target. Humble but confident, skinny but strong, mentally physical, Smith is exactly the kind of blue-collar worker the Eagles fans will love. Even as a person who is objectively tough on the Eagles and their front office, it would be unfair not to give them their due here for drafting Smith and obtaining a first-rounder in next year's draft. In the second round, the Eagles selected Smith's teammate offensive lineman Landon Dickerson. The talented Dickerson can play anywhere on the line, but the injuries are worrisome for Eagles fans, and Dickerson has long injury history with several season-ending injuries in college. It's clear the Eagles are betting on a person of his caliber and Dickerson going forward. This pick certainly divided Eagles fans. If healthy, Dickerson has the tools to be an all-pro for the next decade. That's big if. Eagles fans are going to love this guy, Dickerson, another high-character guy who is beloved by his teammates. Another notable pick, defensive tackle Milton Williams, who had off-the-chart measurables, and Memphis running back Kenneth Gainwell. The Eagles running back room now has Sanders, Scott Howard, newly acquired Kerryon Johnson, and Kenneth Gainwell. Expect one of them to be gone come September. Roseman once again confirmed the organization's commitment to building through the trenches as long as he is in charge. This team will invest heavily on its offensive and defensive line. One area that fans may have hoped to be addressed in day one or two was cornerback. It's clear that there is still a glaring need for outside cornerback on the line across from Slay, but the Eagles seem confident that Zach McPherson, a fourth-round pick, will be able to play or at least provide some depth in that for them this season. Overall, I found the draft encouraging. There is no doubt in my mind the Eagles aren't done with the roster yet. Roseman said it himself, there's many ways to skin a cat. Grade, solid B. If Dickerson stays healthy, Roseman hit a home run here and probably saved his job. So thank you very much to Spencer and Mark for that in-depth analysis. Miklos, what do you think of the Philadelphia Eagles? Mark said it pretty nicely there, but wide receiver, cornerback, inside linebacker, quarterback, safety. They don't address the cornerback need till the fourth round, which kind of seems to be the criticism with the Eagles.
Yeah, and I don't really have much more to add than that, I think. But they, games are won in the trenches. I say that all the time. Many people say that all the time. And so if lots of teams in the NFL have shown that if you have a great front seven, you can get after the quarterback, the secondary can maybe not be as strong as most secondaries are. But still, I do think fans and most people expected them to address the secondary a bit more, given how bad they've been opposite Darius Slay. But outside of that, wide receiver was an obvious need. They want to help Jalen Hurts out, who is going to be the guy there, it looks like. And what better way than get his former teammate and Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith. So I think that fills a huge need for them right away and gives them a bona fide star in that wide receiving room, which is very average before that. And outside of that, if, like they said, if the guys on the line stay healthy and Landon Dickerson pays off and can fill in there protecting Jalen Hurts, then that's another great pick. Overall, I think nothing other than the Devontae Smith pick, which was very exciting. Nothing too crazy here. Just solid filling in depth and trying to get some stability to a really wild team over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and a team that definitely needed a lot after their 4-11-1 season and a brand new regime coming in there. So what do you give the Philadelphia Eagles as far as draft grade?
I mean, they really hit it with Devontae Smith, but as for the rest, I know it's not sexy filling in depth. I think it's a B- for this draft.
Yep, you took the words right out of my mouth. B- for the Philadelphia Eagles, although the Devontae Smith pick was hilarious. The fact that they traded up with Dallas, another division rival, to go and jump and take Devontae Smith over the other division rival in the New York Giants. So I thought that pick was very clever by the Eagles, and they definitely needed somebody. Jalen Reagor as their first-round pick last year as a wide receiver. That one doesn't seem to be working out too well. But I do like Landon Dickerson in the second round if he stays healthy, but there's a lot of big ifs there. So both B- grade for the Eagles. Could have been better, but could have been a lot worse as we've seen some of the drafts this year. But the Eagles did an okay job, and we'll see how they do in the division this year, because last year for their fan base, that was not a good look. So moving on here to the last team in the NFC East. A lot of fan input from this division, as you can expect, because it's the most wildly popular division in the NFL. So lastly, we got the Washington football team. Louis Steinhaus, the owner of Steinhaus Construction here in the Niagara region. He says Washington went into the 2021 draft not looking to hit the big name, not looking for the flashy pick, but instead to fill some holes with impact positions. With their first pick, people could say what they want, that they went off the board with Jamin Davis, a linebacker, but he is an extremely athletic, driven man whose parents are both in the military. Same as Ron Rivera's parents, which you can make the correlation there. In the second round, they selected an offensive lineman, Samuel Cosme from the Texas Longhorns. Hook 'em. If that's from me, that's not from Louis. To fill another void in their roster. In round 3, they selected Canadian Benjamin St. Juste to bolster their cornerback position, which is an important to do in a division that has Cooper, Lamb, Galladay, Smith at wide receiver, just to name a few. Also in the third round, they selected Dimey Brown from North Carolina, speedy guy who is penciled in as their third receiver after McLaurin and Jalen Samuel. In the fourth round, they selected Curtis Samuel, sorry. In the fourth round, they selected a tight end projected to be a very solid tight end, not a Travis Kelce type, but compared to Kyle Rudolph, which was needed with a lack of depth at the position after Logan Thomas, who has only played the position for one season. I give it a B+ with some talent, filled needs, but they didn't take any risks. So thank you very much, Louis, for his thoughts on his Washington football team. Miklos, what are your thoughts here? Their biggest needs were quarterback, offensive line, inside linebacker, wide receiver, and tight end.
Yeah, I think they're continuing to do what Ron Rivera was brought to do in Washington, that's to stabilize the franchise and bring a culture change. There wasn't any obvious wow picks, I don't think, but they're continuing to fill in needs and fill in depth where they need it, and continuing to build up the franchise from the shambles that it has been over the past decades. Really, they're setting things up for the eventual heir to Fitzmagic whenever he decides to give up the starting job to whoever's on the roster now of Kyle Allen, or whoever can take over, or even Heineke, or the eventual franchise quarterback that they end up drafting in the future. Overall, I think this is a really solid draft. They filled in a lot of spots. They continue to build on this impressive defense that they have, and building up the O-line and adding depth to their offensive position. So I'm also going to give them a B+.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Ron Rivera, you know what you're going to get from that guy. He's trying to bring stability to this franchise that hasn't had any, and trying to keep Dan Snyder kind of out of the football operations instead of taking over the draft board like he did a few years ago, drafting Dwayne Haskins to be their franchise quarterback, and that obviously did not work out, and he was released this year. So they're going to need to look for the franchise quarterback eventually, but they definitely are filling out a lot of holes. To me, they have the best front four in all of football, with Chase Young, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, and even Matt Ioannidis, who missed last year. Just an unbelievable defensive line for Ron Rivera's Washington football team here. They get Scott Turner as offensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio at defensive coordinator. So they've got solid pieces here, and I think it was just a solid draft to fill out kind of a little bit more that they needed. They're obviously boosting up that defense. The defense is going to be the heart and soul of this Washington team. We know what Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to do: whip the ball down the field and get it to his playmakers like Antonio Gibson out of the backfield and Terry McLaurin. So for me, I think it was a solid draft for Washington. I'm going to give them a B to a B plus, kind of in that mid range there. You're going to give them a B plus. I just think it was a very, very solid draft for Washington, given the fact that they had all their picks. They had an extra third, and they added 2 extra sevenths, so they had a lot of draft capital, and it sure paid off here for a team looking to repeat as NFC East champions.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So with that said, we'll move on here from... Oh, actually, that's it for the NFC East. I forgot. Went through so much there. A lot of fan input. So for Dallas... gave them a B+. Miklos gave them a B. New York Giants were both on a B. Philadelphia were both on a B-. And Washington on a B to a B+. And Miklos is on a B+. So they definitely needed good drafts, as this division was the worst in football last year. So they definitely all needed good drafts. And for the most part, it looks like they all improved. So that is only going to be better for the league as a whole. So with that said, that's it for the NFC East. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with the NFC North division next. So stay right here on Straight to the Extra Point in our NFC 2021 Draft Recap Show on the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving traditional-style Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and their famous chicken wings. Winners of the Reader's Choice Diamond Award, 4 years running from Niagara this week for Best Pizza and Wings in Niagara Falls. Home of the best tray and wing combo in town for the price and quality. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery at 905-374-4400. Make sure to like them on Facebook and view their website for their menu at carmine'spizzeria.ca. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Way too good. As we all adjust to this new world that we're living in today, masks are now mandatory. And Niagara's own Custom PPE is Canada's leading face mask provider. Visit them online at customppe.ca and choose between several mask options with different colors and sizes. Add your organization, company, or team logo so you make your face masks unique. Available to purchase online 24/7 at customppe.ca and shipped within 1 week. They have the best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, and no order is too big or too small. Also offering custom floor stickers as well as face and counter shields for your business or workplace. Visit customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your custom or blank face mask today. Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider. Attention job seekers, if you are currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, directly across from the Camisos Plaza. Their free services include resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and all their services are currently provided by appointment only. So give them a call at 905-358-0021 or visit their website at ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
This is the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to segment 2 of our Straight to the Extra Point NFC Draft Recap Show. Brandon Caputo and Miklos McMaster back with you here. And before we get into the NFC North Division, this second segment today is brought to you by Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider. Best prices and quickest turnaround built from right here in the Niagara region. Order today at customppe.ca. We've got ours. Time to get your custom face mask to keep us safe. Customppe.ca. Miklos, let's go into the NFC North Division here. A lot of fan input from the NFC East, so my voice is already going, but we're going to get through it here. The Chicago Bears, and we've got some fan input here. Firstly, I've got some fan input from, and if I can find it here, we've got Jacob Mensfeld says, I'm very pleased on Justin Fields. I like the concept of taking him a lot, but to give up that much feels to me makes me uneasy. I hope he is better than than the sliding that's happening to him in the mock drafts. I have faith. He also says, I think the steal of the draft was Tony for the Giants. Most years he would have been a top 2 wide receiver and the man that Tyreek Hill has in his DNA. And the man has Tyreek Hill in his DNA, sorry. Look to him to be a factor in year 2 after he develops his roots and a little more, but the man is a weapon. At worst, he's Miles Austin and best Tyreek Hill. Okay. Don't be fooled by his trickery that's happening. Jones has the weapons. All I would like to see is a trade for a lineman. The Bengals taking Chase shows Burrow runs the show, not the organization. Burrow, though, should value his longevity. Not sure why they picked his friend over that. So thanks, Jacob, for your quick thoughts on the Bears and just general thoughts. And Miklos, you've got some input on the Chicago Bears, your fiance being the Bears fan that she is.
Yeah, so she is extremely fired up about the fact that they traded forward and got the incredibly talented Justin Fields. She saw the grit and tenacity that he put into the college football playoffs his most recent season. And given the, we'll say checkered to be nice, history of quarterbacks in the great city of Chicago, I think Justin Fields might, if he gets the opportunity, break every single season quarterback record that Chicago has, which, to be fair, is not that crazy, I don't think. But right away, she is extremely fired up, and she wants you to know that she thinks the Bears are favorites to make it to the Super Bowl from the NFC after this.
Oh my goodness, that's a hot take if I've ever heard one. But yeah, I mean, we talk about the Chicago Bears, and they had a pretty bad draft last year. They didn't have a lot of draft capital at all. They took Cole Kmet with their first pick last year, a tight end from Notre Dame. And again, this team, I mean, they didn't have a 3rd and 4th round pick. They had 3 6th. And this team, like you mentioned, and like Kayla mentioned, just the quarterbacks have not been kind to the Chicago Bears, and they really haven't found that franchise quarterback that they had hoped. And for me, Justin Fields was the guy that I wanted the Atlanta Falcons to take at number 4. So the fact that he was still there for them, or they select him at 11th overall, they jump up the trade to get him. They gave up an extra first-round pick, Miklos, but when you're the Bears and you need a quarterback that bad, you have to trade up to get this guy. Their biggest needs, obviously, were quarterback, offensive tackle, offensive guard, wide receiver, and cornerback. Do you think they did a good job at filling those needs?
I absolutely think they filled those needs. And I mean, it really has been a shame to see the unbelievable defense that they have over there being wasted over the past couple of years with the just abysmal quarterback play. I mean, I believe it was Warren Sapp who, with the Super Bowl winning Buccaneers, told his offense that all he needs is 17 points and they're going to win that game. And that really has been what the Bears defense has done the past couple of years, and their offense still couldn't even get them that. Now, I know a lot of these guys are getting a little bit older. Khalil Mack's getting a little bit older. Akeem Hicks is getting older. But this defense is still championship caliber and unbelievable. And if they're getting help from their offense, that'll make them even more deadly. And I think Justin Fields immediately does that. I know he isn't slated to start right away. Andy Dalton is slated as the starter right now, but I think the calls for Justin Fields to get on the field and for Matt Nagy to start doing some exciting things with his overall athleticism and talent will be coming early and often. David Montgomery had a renaissance at the end of last year with the way he was running the ball, and I think with Justin Fields throwing the ball to Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney, I think this offense is going to be radically changed from last year. And I think great picks getting offensive tackles with the next two, with Tevin Jenkins and then Larry Borum in the 5th. I think that those were both great selections. And overall, given what they have and the lack of capital they've had in the past, I think this was an unbelievable draft by the Bears that immediately makes them a playoff candidate, if not a contender, as my fiance thinks.
Yeah, I mean, their offense looks incredibly better just for the fact that, you know, they're moving on from their subpar quarterback play. I mean, again, Andy Dalton, they signed him. I was questioning that in our free agency recap about what they're doing with that. I don't expect Nick Foles to be on this team to start the year. You don't want basically the third string guy making $20 million, so they're going to find a way, I think, to get rid of that contract somehow. And then Justin Fields coming in. this guy is going to hopefully be the guy that the Chicago Bears have been needing for decades at the quarterback position. I think he's a very, very solid player. I don't know how he slipped so far from being, close to Trevor Lawrence and the 1-2 spot as far as the top quarterbacks go, to being the guy that slipped and ended up being, I believe, was the 4th quarterback taken off the list. So for me, I think that's a great pickup for the Chicago Bears, and their offense, like you mentioned, their rock solid defense needed some help, and I think they addressed that here. And then obviously getting Tevin Jenkins in the 2nd round to solidify the offensive tackle spot that they desperately needed to fill. And I just think there's a better outlook on the Bears going into this year as it was opposed to going into last year, where they took a tight end with their first pick and really didn't know what they were doing as a team. Just lacked that offensive star power, and what they did and did not get from Mitch Trubisky. That draft pick just needs to be forgotten about, because Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes were both taken later in that draft, and they had traded up to get Mitch Trubisky. So they're going to want to forget about that, and Justin Fields is hopefully the player that can make them forget about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully he will put Mitchell Trubisky into the rear view for Bears fans very quickly.
So what is your draft grade for the Chicago Bears?
Given the change to the franchise that this draft brings, and the fact they added some solid picks in later rounds, I'm giving them an A.
Wow, an A grade for the Chicago Bears from Miklos.
I mean, considering they were picking at 20 and they traded up to 11 and still get their potential franchise quarterback of the future, I consider that whole scenario alone worthy of an A grade for this draft.
Yeah, I'm giving the Bears an A- here after giving them probably one of my worst draft grades last year. Definitely an improvement this year. Helps when they have a first-round pick. They won't next year because of the trade for Justin Fields. But for this year, they needed to go up and get that quarterback, as we keep saying. And Tevin Jenkins in the 2nd round, and then they got another tackle in the 5th round. So they definitely filled some needs. But that Justin Fields pick and them, having the cojones to go up and make that trade, I think you got to give the Bears a lot of credit for that. Matt Nagy definitely needing that quarterback. So for me, I'm giving the Bears an A-, and you're going to give them an A, very, very solid grade with an A for the Bears. And we'll move on to the next team. And I'm sure your fiance is going to be happy with your thoughts on those Bears, and you're not going to be in trouble today there, buddy. So moving on to the Detroit Lions. Good thing she's not a Lions fan, Miklo. She'd be a lot worse going on over there. But oh man, the Detroit Lions. And again, this is a team that's going through a changing of the guard. They got rid of Matt Stafford, trading him to Los Angeles to the Rams, and they get Jared Goff back. Don't really know if he's a long-term option for them, but they got Dan Campbell. They got rid of the Matt Patricia era. It's done. They got Dan Campbell, the guy coming in, guns a-blazing in his press conference, saying they're going to bite off kneecaps. And this guy's fired up to be the head coach of the Detroit Lions. They got Anthony Lynn at offensive coordinator, so another solid offensive mind coming over there from the Los Angeles Chargers. And as far as their draft goes, they're the ones that get Penei Sewell at 7th overall. I think that's unbelievable that they were able to get Penei Sewell at number 7. He should have went, I believe, to the Bengals at number 5, but we talked about that in the AFC where they went with that. And their biggest needs are wide receiver, inside linebacker, DN, safety, and quarterback. So what do you think of the Lions?
Honestly, this is exactly the type of draft that you want, considering you just blew everything up and are starting from scratch. I think they, as we saw, if anyone watched the draft coverage, their draft room was freaking out when they had Penei Sewell drop to them, which absolutely I would too. This is where you build your franchise from, is from the lines out. And considering they weren't going for a franchise quarterback, I'm sure they still believe in Jared Goff. He's young, he's tough, it's not like a complete restart, and he has shown that he can be a successful quarterback in the NFL. But with their first 3 picks, they address the offensive and defensive line, which is exactly where you want to start from if you're bringing in a new front office and coaching staff and want to establish a new culture. Then after that, with their 2nd, 3rd round pick, I certainly hope that Ifeatu Melifonwu turns out better than his brother Obi, who the Raiders drafted. Also a physical specimen, but not a great football player. So if he can turn those physical traits into being a good rangy corner for the Lions, that would be a great pick as well. And then the St. Brown family, they have got just absolutely fantastic names with their older son Equiminius on the Green Bay Packers, and now Amon-Ra, named after the sun god, I imagine, from Egypt. At least that's the exact same name anyway. Just incredible name. Also very solid receiver out of USC, given Jared Goff some more weapons over there, considering their entire receiving core departed in the offseason. Overall, I think they added, given the draft picks that they added the pieces that they needed to start this rebuild. And I think this is a solid B+ to A- draft for the Lions.
Wow. Never would have thought we'd be giving the Detroit Lions anything in the positive category. But again, new regime there, new new coaching staff. Hopefully the Lions can build this into something that fan base can be proud of, because it has not been good probably ever, and a team that's still looking for their first Super Bowl. So you're giving the Lions a B+ and A- grade on, like you mentioned, a completely blown up roster and kind of starting over here. Penei Sewell is an instant win for him, dropping to number 7. I'm going to give them a B. I do like the Detroit Lions draft, but as far as, they get a couple of D tackles in the second and third round, like you mentioned, that's very, very important. But nothing really jumps out at me. They just have a solid draft, and obviously Penei Sewell. I could even jump it up to a B to a B+, but I'm going to keep it at a B for now for the Lions, and we'll kind of see how they progress here with Jared Goff at quarterback and Dan Campbell as their new head coach. But Penei Sewell, the prized possession going to Detroit, and hopefully for them, is a staple as left tackle for many years to come. So decent draft, in my opinion, for the Lions, a B grade, and Miklos gives them a B+ to an A-. Next, oh boy, the Green Bay Packers, and they've had a pretty tumultuous offseason so far. Before the draft started, we had the rumors that Aaron Rodgers does not want to be back with the team. He's frustrated with the way that the front office has kind of went about things, and even the play calling by Matt LaFleur in that playoff game where they chose to kind of kick the field goal and instead of letting him go for it on 4th down. When you have Aaron Rodgers inside the red zone, they decided not to go for it. And it seems like there's a big disconnect there between your franchise quarterback and literally reigning league MVP, which would be the first time that a league MVP was traded the year that he won it. So, Miklos, I know you got strong opinions on the Packers before we get into their draft stuff, so take it away with your thoughts on the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this in that playoff game whenever we talked about it after the fact, that I'm honestly getting really sick of this whole narrative that, like, Aaron Rodgers is just carrying this team by himself and there's not a single not a single player out there helping him. Like, Aaron Jones is a top 10 for sure, top 5 probably running back in the NFL. Devontae Adams, top 5 wide receiver, just absolutely unbelievable. And it's not like the guys behind him are, even though they're not well-known names, Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdes-Scantling make big impacts. This team went back-to-back 13-3 seasons. And let's not forget, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that the defense, which everyone complains about isn't helping, picked off Tom Brady not once, not twice, but 3 times in that game. And they got, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, a grand total of 3 points off of those turnovers. So Aaron Rodgers, honestly, I think, needs to grow up and get over it. Like, you're talking about, I'm not getting enough help out here. You're 13-3 back-to-back NFC Championship games. I don't know what help you need other than make do with what you have. Tom Brady won Super Bowls with talent way less than this, and you want to talk about Aaron Rodgers being the GOAT, that he should be able to make it happen with an all-star running back and wide receiver with a defense that is getting better every single year. I mean, honestly, it's absolutely ridiculous to hear the complaints year in and year out, given I wouldn't imagine another team that was going 13-3 on the regular since getting LaFleur as their coach complaining this much. It's ridiculous.
And they did not take a receiver until the 3rd round with Amari Rodgers, and people were complaining that, was that a slap in the face to Aaron Rodgers taking a receiver in the 3rd round? I don't know what the deal is with that, but again, it just seems like we put Aaron Rodgers on this pedestal like he is the great talent that he is, maybe the best talent now that Patrick Mahomes is coming on. He was the guy before Mahomes kind of took off that everybody said, this guy is must-watch television. He can elevate anybody on this team, which he has elevated a lot of players in the past. And with this organization, they have taken him for granted, I feel, at some points. But again, 13-3, 2 years in a row. Just really, what more can you ask for? They're trying to put some pieces around him here, and it just seems like there's something else going on behind the scenes that any little thing just gets blown out of proportion and becomes a big story nowadays with just basically the spiral that has become between the Rodgers and the organization disconnect there. It just seems like even though now it's the smallest of things that's getting in the way, it's just the accumulation over the years, I think, is what has led to this scenario and Aaron Rodgers eventually wanting out here.
Yeah, honestly, and it just feels like since he fell on draft day and wasn't drafted as high as he thought he should have been in that draft, he's just been disgruntled about anything that happens since being in the league, which for a guy who's been so unbelievably successful and been in such a great situation with a historic franchise like Green Bay, I mean, you wouldn't expect it to happen so often.
Yeah, so they take Jordan Love in the first round last year, the quarterback, which also was another big story of what the deal was with Aaron Rodgers, but he went on to win the MVP. And as far as Green Bay this year in the draft, biggest needs: wide receiver, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, D-end, and corner. How do you think that they did?
I think so. Getting Eric Stokes, if he steps in and starts right away on the spot opposite Zaire Alexander, that immediately upgrades their secondary, which, given the way the NFL is going, is what you want to do. They bring in Josh Myers as well to solidify their O-line, give some more protection to Aaron Rodgers, and then Amari Rodgers added in the third round. I don't see. Everyone is all about getting the wide receiver in the first round, but I can also name just as many wide receivers in the first round who turned into massive busts in recent history. So I don't think, it's more capital you're investing in the pick and showing that you care more or whatever. But if Amari Rodgers continues his production like he had at Clemson, then there's a solid 1-2 punch with Devontae Adams along with the other players on their roster. So I don't think people should get that bent out of shape over that. Overall, I think this is a pretty solid draft. They added a lot of depth. Nothing immediately that sticks out as an all-star pick for them. They don't immediately upgrade any positions, and they really need Eric Stokes to turn out, I think, for this to be a successful draft. Overall, I think it's a B-.
Yep, I'm going to give the Packers a B- as well, just for the fact that, again, it was a loaded receiving group this year, so there was a lot of guys available in the second and third rounds that may have been first-round talents in previous years. So I think that them taking a wide receiver in the third round wasn't the worst thing in the world. He could have been, a guy that was drafted in the second round in other years just because of the I guess the competition at the wide receiver spot this year as far as the talent up and down. It was a very loaded spot this year. So with that said, they filled some needs later on in the draft, like obviously inside linebacker and cornerback, obviously with Eric Stokes. I think it was their number one need, really, and they went and filled that. So I don't really see the gripe with that. 29th overall, Eric Stokes, again, where he was drafted, there really wasn't a gripe in my mind. And Amari Rodgers coming in there with Valdez-Scantling, Quanius St. Brown, and Alan Lazard looking to kind of elevate the competition there for Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love, whatever quarterback is going to be there as far as their skill position goes. So I'm going to give the Packers a B-. I think that there, like you mentioned, there weren't any sexy picks, but they got the job done. But obviously, you're always wanting more, especially with the Packers, who their drafting over the years hasn't been exactly the greatest. But we'll see if Jordan Love steps in when this whole Aaron Rodgers situation gets figured out. We kind of have to. They're kind of a wait and see where they're at with if Rodgers is on the team or if he's not, to kind of see whether this draft was really as successful. So it's kind of a wait and see. But we're both going to give them a B- at this point for the Green Bay Packers. And moving on to the last team in the NFC North, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. And I do have Vikings input from Jesse Melna, big Minnesota Vikings fan. He says, first pick Darashaw couldn't have worked out any better. Smoked the Jets by trading back for what turned out to be a lotto pick / flyer on Kellen Mond and another potential starter in guard Wyatt Davis. First, Darashaw fills a huge need if he's even average or above average, it's a slam dunk. The D-line has been that bad. Third, Kellen Mond. I knew they were going to go QB at some point. Our backup situation was bad. Kirk's an Iron Man, but if he went down, major troubles. I'm not buying the Fields round 1 rumors, but I'm glad it didn't work out. Would be too much distraction, and Kirk is set for 2 more years. Mond is cheap backup at the very least. Maybe he works out, maybe not. Third round or not, an overly big deal where the first on Fields would have been. Third, linebacker Chaz Surratt. Didn't like the pick. Converted. Quarterback, very odd. Very much a project, and I was hoping for a more established player, not a special teamer that early. Wyatt David, the guard, Steele, loved it. Needed an upgrade at the guard badly, and I think starting right away. Vikes went away from the usual philosophy, zone quick guys to the mauler. Third, Patrick Jones, again, a bit unlike the Vikes, usually like more athletic and long DNs, but he seems like a polished average at everything kind of guy. Fourth rounder, Kenny Nwangwu, athletic and speedy, but felt kind of early, bit of a reach, sound like just a kick returner, so they didn't really like using a fourth on that. Another project. Fourth, Cameron Bynum. Vikes safety depth is weak, converted cornerback, so another project. Would have liked a safety in the third and linebacker here. Fourth, Janoris Robinson, classic Mike Zimmer, Vikes D-end, long athletic freak project. They were always trying to land the next Daniil Hunter. Fifth round, Emir Smith Marset, another kick returner with potential at wide receiver, another project. Felt like a reach. Fifth, tight end Zach Davidson, converted punter, extremely odd. Massive man with speed, but biggest project of them of all, D2 school. Sixth, D tackle Jalen Twyman, beast of a man, trains with Aaron Donald. Hopefully that rubs off. Awesome late round pick. Overall, O-line was all I cared about going into the draft. Got 2 high picks, potential starters, tons of projects and long shots. Hopefully 1 and 2 turn out. Draft grade B+. So thank you very much, Jesse Melna, for your thoughts on the Minnesota Vikings. So Miklos, what are your thoughts on the Vikings this year? Their biggest needs were D-end, offensive lineman, center, safety, and inside linebacker, and they had a lot of extra picks this year.
Yeah, I think it does feel like the Vikings always have a ton of picks. I feel like they always have like 10, 12 picks in every draft. But I think they nailed it with their first pick, getting Christian Darrisaw that locks in the left tackle position to protect Kirk Cousins. It does seem strange, but I think Kellen Mond was kind of a need for them, and it crazy as it sounds, they didn't have a good backup quarterback, and as they mentioned, if Kirk Cousins went down, it was going to be all over for this team. So they need someone behind him, even if it's a third round pick. I don't think it's that crazy. I do think Chaz Surratt is a bit surprising, considering the type of player he is. He is a converted quarterback from North Carolina. Even though he played in his year as a linebacker for North Carolina, he was very, very good. But I do think they could have filled some other needs there. And then Wyatt Davis, I think, also was a solid pick to continue solidifying that offensive line. Overall, I think it was a fairly solid draft, filling in a lot of depth. And if these project players that they have in later rounds turn out, then, all the better. So I think a solid B overall.
B for the Minnesota Vikings, and this is a team that had a lot of turnover, especially on the defensive side of the ball with Mike Zimmer. They had a lot of veterans that have kind of left the organization in the last year, and they kind of had to rebuild that entire defense, especially the front and the secondary. There's a lot of new players on there, a lot of young players. I think bringing in Patrick Peterson will be huge as well, the longtime Arizona Cardinal. So I think Mike Zimmer's doing a good job at building back up this defense to something that we had expected from the Vikings as, that great defensive team that they have been throughout the years, and they needed to get better on the offensive side of the ball. Justin Jefferson last year has been a revelation. Christian Darrisaw at left tackle, I think he was a very, very solid pick for Minnesota. So I think they definitely did address some needs and continued to build on the positions that they had kind of scrapped down and tried to rebuild in the last couple of years. So I think it was a solid draft for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to give them a B to a B+ grade, and you're going to give them a B grade. So pretty solid for the NFC North. Miklos and myself, as far as Chicago, A- for me, A for Miklos. Detroit, B for myself, B+, A- for Miklos. B-, we were a consensus on that for Green Bay. And Minnesota, B to a B+ for myself, and Miklos gave them a B grade. So the NFC North, we'll kind of see what goes on with that division. A couple of question marks, but will be an interesting division come next season. So With that said, we're going to take our next commercial break on the show today. We're going to come back with the NFC South portion of the NFC Draft Recap. Get your popcorn ready. Stay right here. I'll be right back on Straight to the Extra Point and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network.
J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity, offering a unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team. They connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in May of 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently providing a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where drinks and live music come together to make a perfect evening. For more than 15 years, they have provided not only for their dedicated locals, but their customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and great live entertainment. Open daily 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner and till 2 a.m. for drinks. Check out their new menu and book reservations on their website at Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, it's with an E at the end, .com, or call 905-371-2323 for reservations as well. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to segment 3 of our Straight to the Extra Point NFC 2021 Draft Recap Show. Brandon Miklos, Master, back with you here. And this segment today is brought to you by J&L Flooring, a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. Simplified processes and making homes beautiful are their specialties. Visit them at jnlflooring.com to start on the floor of your dreams today. So we're going to go into the NFC South portion of our recap. And we'll start off here with the Atlanta Falcons. Miklos, their biggest needs were cornerback, quarterback, tight end, apparently tight end, offensive outside linebacker, and running back. How do you think the Atlanta Falcons did in this draft?
Honestly, well, so they started off with, I know it wasn't your favorite pick of the draft, but they took the best player available in Kyle Pitts. And I think that pick was basically saying, we have faith that Matt Ryan has some gas left in the tank, and we're going to give him all the weapons he needs to get us there. So adding Kyle Pitts to the already stellar pass-catching group of Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, I mean, what more could Matt Ryan want to make this offense tick? And then the rest of the draft, they added some safety depth, which they have needed given the injury history and the departure of Keanu O'Neal. And then some more depth players throughout the draft. I mean, other than Kyle Pitts, I think overall it was pretty average. I thought they could have gotten a bit more in rounds 2, 3, and 4, given that they had 4 picks there to upgrade their defense a little bit, which has been a real sore spot for them. And I can tell you from my experience with him that Eric Harris is not the answer at safety. I mean, I love him, undrafted free agent, well overachieving what you would expect out of someone like him. But yeah, he's definitely not a long-term solution at safety. So I do think they could have gotten a lot more with the mid and late round picks than what they ended up getting.
Oh boy. So I'm going to start off by saying this. They obviously have cap issues. So there's obviously reason for concern with that. And if Julio Jones is going to be on this team, that was a question mark going into this draft, what they were going to do. They drafted Kyle Pitts, the highest drafted tight end in NFL history now. And with Trevor Lawrence was projected as the best player available in the draft, even as a tight end, which is unheard of to go that high for a tight end, but he's more of a receiver at this point and just a cheat code out there, which he was for Florida, and we'll see how he translates to the NFL. But if you're putting this much stock into Matt Ryan, being his age, having 1 to maybe 2 years left on his contract, depending on how you want to structure that, with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and you even have Hayden Hurst, who was a first-round pick a couple years back for the Baltimore Ravens. He's no slouch at tight end. I understand Kyle Pitts is like a generational talent at tight end and the receiving position basically for Atlanta, but if Matt Ryan doesn't get it done this year with that receiving core, then that just goes to show that they really should have went with a quarterback in this spot. They don't have any other quarterbacks on the roster up until they got A.J. McCarron, formerly of the Bengals and the Houston Texans and Oakland Raiders back in the day, and they get Felipe Franks, a college free agent. So it's just they really need some depth on that quarterback spot, and I really think that it was time to kind of get that quarterback to sit behind Matt Ryan, to have that guy ready to go for when Matt Ryan is done. But then, you don't have a guy like Kyle Pitts to throw to. I understand that. But I just think that the Falcons, if they really weren't going to go with quarterback, they could have traded down and got a couple of more assets. Kind of like the New York Giants did when they realized the guy that they wanted was gone. They trade down. And I don't know if Atlanta was looking at one of the other quarterbacks that were taken with Lawrence, Wilson, or Trey Lance, but I really thought Justin Fields is going to be the pick here for Atlanta. And I'll go to my grave saying that I really think that this was the year for them to take that next franchise quarterback. But they go with Kyle Pitts. They go with Richie Grant in the second round. Obviously, they needed secondary help with Keanu O'Neal gone, and just not a lot of talent on that secondary whatsoever. And to me, the defense is going to be the Achilles heel of this team once again, like it is year in and year out. Dan Quinn is now gone as a defensive coordinator / head coach, and now you bring in Dean Pease, which I love the fact that Arthur Smith, coming over from Tennessee, was able to get Dean Pease out of retirement. I think he's going to be a strong stabilizer for that defense, and Dean Pease has had great defenses over the years. But again, they get Jalen Mayfield in the third round, an offensive lineman who's currently slotted in as the backup left guard at this point, but I think there could be a competition there between him and Willie Wright. And then other than that, a couple of later round picks, Daquan Graham, which I never get to say that Atlanta Falcons take a Texas Longhorn player, so I was soaking up that one even though it was a 5th round D tackle. It just never happened, so I was really excited about that. And other than that, just a couple of late round picks that Frank Darby, a wide receiver, Avery Williams, a cornerback. So just filling out depth. But again, this Atlanta Falcons team needs a lot more than just depth. They need starters on the defensive side of the ball. And to me, other than Richie Grant, who might not even start the year as the starting safety, they really didn't do as good as I wanted them to do in the positions of glaring need that they had, like quarterback, like corner, safety, and even linebacker. I just don't see where they improved as much as everybody says they did, other than Kyle Pitts, getting the best player in the available in the draft. You can say that wins them a great draft grade, but in my mind, considering how bad the defense was last year and blowing 10 of out of their 12 losses, 10 of them they were leading in, and that was mostly due to the defense not being able to get stops and special teams being a nightmare. So I just don't see how the team got a lot better, and when you're competing with New Orleans and Carolina's getting a lot better in the defending champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I just don't know. This team better be able to outscore basically like the Dallas Cowboys, although Dallas improved on the defensive side of the ball in this draft. Atlanta's going to have to score 40 points a game, I think, to win this season, and obviously with Kyle Pitts they can do that. So for me, I'm giving the Atlanta Falcons a B- because I just think that given the amount of needs that they had with their cap situation and having a good amount of draft picks in this year's draft, an extra 4th, 2 extra 5ths, I don't see where they got a lot better other than getting another skilled position player and another tight end to kind of go with Hayden Hurst, who I don't expect to be on the team going into this year. If they have cap issues, they can't be paying 2 tight ends that kind of money. So for me, it might B- for the Atlanta Falcons as I cut it short here, as I could go on for hours.
Hey, we can both suffer with our favorite teams here, Coach.
Thanks. And your grade for the Atlanta Falcons was?
I also had a B-.
All right. So we'll see Kyle Pitts again. Hopefully he proves me wrong that he was the right pick, but to me, the franchise quarterback, and they didn't even draft a quarterback with any of these picks, just didn't make any sense to me. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Atlanta Falcons. Next, we'll move on to the next team in the division, and that is the Carolina Panthers. And my friend Scott Abraham has some thoughts on the Carolina Panthers, and he says the Panthers draft was the most exciting yet frustrating thing I've ever witnessed. We all wanted Sewell, and once he made it past Cincinnati, it looked like he was about to fall into our lap and fill our team's biggest need, while also being one of the best offensive line prospects in the last 10 years. Enter Detroit, heartbreaking. It was really a tough pill to swallow, being one pick away from Sewell, especially since Detroit seemed poised to take a wide receiver, and 2 of the big 3 were still out there. At this point, some thought Fields would be selected or a trade back occur. After taking nearly the entire clock to make the decision, Carolina picked J.C. Horn, the cornerback. It was underwhelming at the time, in all honesty. Horn is a great player, evidently, but it just wasn't the direction we as fans thought would be taken. Fast forward to day 2 with left tackle still on the board. We traded back. Why? Then we trade back again. Okay, this is just insane. Going from an early second to a late second was very questionable because our biggest need is a left tackle. Finally, we make the selection. It's wide receiver Terrence Marshall Jr. Okay, again, strange. On to round 3, 70th overall, Brady Christensen, left tackle at a BYU. Finally, next pick at 83, Tommy Tremble, tight end at a Notre Dame. Now, this is where we've been waiting for. Panthers would trade down twice more later on to accumulate picks. Now let's get the picks individually. J.C. Horn, lockdown cornerback. Want to buy time for your line to get at the quarterback. This guy buys it. Horn shut down every single top wide receiver in college, and Kyle Pitts as well. Horn will not get the flashy interception numbers, but he eliminates any team's number 1, forcing the quarterback through their progression. Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Mike Evans. Yeah, you might as well not even suit up against Carolina. This guy, whoa, quite the hot take there. This guy is considered one of the best pure athletes to even come out of the draft and has skills to pair with that. Terrence Marshall Jr., late first talent, selected late second, guy balled out, never had a drop in college, even when his teammates opted out. Will he be a number 1 doubtful wide receiver? Yes, absolutely. Him paired with DJ Moore and or Robbie Anderson, just stupid. Marshall is a great red zone target due to his size, speed, and his contested catch ability. His main concern is the knee durability, which caused him to drop in the draft. Darnold is in heaven. Much like Horn, he is highly rated guy athletically. Brady Christensen, left tackle. He's a top-tier left tackle in this draft. No, but he still should be an average starter in the league and much more quickly than most prospects. When the season starts, Christensen will be 25 with a lot of experience. He will obviously still need some work, in my opinion. Is a pretty safe bet to be a solid contributor. Brady is another great talent. Don't think he had the potential to be top left tackle in the league, but honestly, we just need him to be solid. Our next pick will help with that too. Lastly, Tommy Tremble, tight end. Oh boy, what can I say about Tommy Tremble other than look the F out. The best non-O lineman blocker in the entire draft and in the last few seasons. This man is an absolute machine. He will help whoever is lined up at left tackle for us immensely. Guy loves blocking people. So thank you very much, Scott, for that in-depth analysis of your Carolina Panthers. And Miklos, with that said, Carolina's biggest needs were tight end, offensive guard, D-end, quarterback, and cornerback. What did you think of the Panthers in this draft?
Yeah, I think a couple people were surprised that J.C. Horn got taken so high, but immediately he gets slotted in as a starter opposite Dante Jackson, and I think Matt Rule is just trying to continuously rebuild this roster and rebuild this team, and I think he was doing a great job of it. I mean, they brought in Sam Darnold now, and hopefully, for both their sakes, Sam Darnold can have a renaissance in Carolina. I do think he desperately needed a change of scenery. They bring in Terrace Marshall, who was one of the overlooked wide receivers, I think, in LSU because of all the superstars that they have, but he is really solid, and added to DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, I think that really give Sam Darnold a lot of weapons. And then they bring in Brady Christensen, I think a solid tackle who will compete for a starting tackle spot for them and help bring some depth to the O-line. Chuba Hubbard, the Canadian, shout out, getting drafted to maybe take even a fraction of the monumental load that Christian McCaffrey carries on a season-to-season basis for these guys. And the rest of the draft, they added lots of depth and hopefully, for their sake, some key contributors. I think this was a solid draft for them. I'll give them a B for this.
Okay, a B for the Carolina Panthers. And again, Chuba Hubbard, I just think in an offensive system with Carolina, you have Matt Rule there and offensive coordinator Joe Brady. I think they're going to find a way to get him the ball as a great playmaker. And again, if Christian McCaffrey goes down again, they have a guy like Chuba Hubbard that can be that guy to catch balls out of the backfield and be that bell cow as well. He's very versatile and obviously had great seasons for Oklahoma State Cowboys in the Big 12. So I think Chuba Hubbard, unfortunately for my Atlanta Falcons, is going to be a force to be reckoned with for Carolina for years to come. I think that was a very, very good pick in the 4th round. And J.C. Horn, obviously, the cornerback, they might not have won going into the draft. Maybe they were looking at another position, but him in that spot was solid, and I think Terrence Marshall fell way past where he should have been. He drafted in the 27th pick in the 2nd round. I thought he should have been a first-round talent for the Ravens at 27th overall. So I think the fact that the Panthers got a lot of guys that I felt that slipped in the draft and kind of fell into their lap, and considering the amount of draft capital they had 3 6ths, 2 5ths, an extra third. I think they did a solid job. Unfortunately, as much as I don't like them, I'm going to give the Carolina Panthers a B+ for this draft because I think that they definitely address some needs. And we'll see what goes on at quarterback there. They obviously, Sam Darnold probably was the reason why they didn't draft a quarterback, but he's still young enough where he can be the franchise guy. They trade away Teddy Bridgewater to Denver, which was not a good, did not work out well. As long as Sam Darnold stays healthy, this team should be okay. And they should be on their way back up from a 5-11 season last season. So I'm going to give the Panthers a B+. You're going to give them a B rating, a solid draft for the Panthers, Matt Rule, Joe Brady, and the brass there. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints, who are obviously going through a transition phase now that Hall of Fame quarterback Drew Brees has announced his retirement. Sean Payton kind of has to look to the next guy there. Is it going to be Taysom Hill? Is it going to be Jameis Winston or the newly drafted Ian Book from Notre Dame? So with that said, Miklos, what did you think of the Saints draft? Wide receiver, corner, offensive, outside linebacker, safety, and offensive guard were their biggest needs.
Yeah, and I think obviously Drew Brees is an irreplaceable loss, and we'll see what they do to try and keep this quality team going with the loss of their unquestioned leader and Hall of Fame quarterback. I think this draft was pretty average for the Saints. I don't see very many impact guys. They bring in Pete Werner in the 2nd round. I think that was probably their best pick to fill in at linebacker for them. But Peyton Turner in their 1st round pick, I mean, we'll see what he brings to the table in terms of adding to their pass rush. But as for the rest of the picks, I don't see a lot of impact guys that they have beyond that. Ian Book, I mean, he had some exciting games with Notre Dame, but I doubt he'll be competing for the starting job. He'll probably be filling in as a backup and then developing hopefully down the road for them, I imagine, with they do seem to be fully committed to Taysom Hill being the starter. But yeah, overall, I mean, I don't see anything that jumps out to me about this draft that makes me excited or think that they got better. So I'm giving this like a C+.
Yep, unfortunately, again, it feels like I'm copying you, but I just don't see where New Orleans really got better. I mean, again, this was a solid team, a solid defense, so there really weren't going to be many holes to fill necessarily. I mean, our lads has Pete Werner as one of their starting linebackers. He's basically the only guy that slots into a starting position with their 2nd round pick there. Peyton Turner is not even projected to be the starter. Obviously, you have Cameron Jordan there and Marcus Davenport, so I really don't know if they plan to move one of those guys on eventually and have Peyton Turner kind of be that next guy to jump into that D-line spot, but I just don't know. I think the Saints, I don't really know what they were doing in this draft. They get the DN, the linebacker, the corner, and they draft Ian Book later on in the 4th round. Really just didn't really jump off at the page to me, and they drafted a wide receiver in the 7th round with Quan Baker. So for me, I'm going to give the Saints, and I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, I'm going to give them a C to a C+, because I really just was underwhelmed by the Saints in this draft, and considering that they're a team that's trying to compete, especially with Tampa Bay in that division, I just don't really see how they really got a lot better from this draft. They really just, I feel like it was kind of underwhelming considering the fact that they had some needs to fill and kind of did that later on in the draft instead of early on in the draft, kind of taking some luxury picks where they already had a ton of depth at those picks that they took in the 1st and 2nd round. So for me, I'm going to give the Saints a C, an underwhelming C to a C+, and Miklos going with a C for the Saints this year, but still should be a solid team. We'll see what they look like without Drew Brees at quarterback next year with Sean Payton. But with that, let's move on to the last team in the NFC South, and that is the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Tom Brady, bringing back most of the team. It's incredible to me how, with the turnover that happens in the NFL year in and year out, especially for teams that go on to win a Super Bowl, the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to bring back most of their lineup that they had in the Super Bowl. So Bruce Arians and Tom Brady and those guys did a great job at bringing back most of the team. But with that, in their draft this year, their biggest needs, if you can call them needs, were wide receiver, offensive tackle, quarterback, D-end, and outside linebacker. How do you think that the defending Super Bowl champions did picking last in the draft?
You say most. I think they brought back literally everybody. This is just absolutely absurd and continues to be the Tom Brady effect on any team that he's in the NFL. This is just unheard of, to have a team win the Super Bowl and then not lose any starters. Like, they're returning everybody, which is just stupid. So as a result, what were their draft needs? Nothing, obviously. They won the Super Bowl, and they're just going to get better next year because they're going to have a proper offseason. They have a year of playing together, and they got Tom freaking Brady. So what are your needs? Nothing. So what did they get? They add another pass rusher and Joe Tryon, who can line up with the already ridiculous combination of JPP and Shaquille Barrett, along with Levante David and Devin White. I mean, every pick here is a luxury pick. They get Kyle Trask in the 2nd round. Hey, Kyle, guess what? You get to learn from the best who's ever played the game of football at quarterback. Have fun sitting on the bench, and whenever you come in, hopefully you imparted some of that knowledge and skill. Outside of that, it wasn't like there was any flashy picks, but I mean, they're picking at the end of the draft, and overall, they didn't get worse, which is pretty much all they could do after winning the Super Bowl, is just continue to add depth, to add quality players here and there, and Kyle Trask building for the future. So overall, I think this is a B to B plus, because they could just pick whoever they wanted.
Yeah, they really, like you mentioned, everything was a luxury. They didn't really have any needs, getting most of, if not all, their starters back from the Super Bowl winning team. So really, what did you expect them to do, really, picking last in the draft and really not really having any holes to fill? They picked Kyle Trask, I think, in the 2nd round. Was interesting for the fact that they already had Josh Rosen as the backup quarterback, and Blaine Gabbert, I guess Josh Rosen has now been moved on from. I don't know. He's not even on their depth chart anymore. So I guess bringing in Kyle Trask was enough for them to kind of part ways with Josh Rosen, and Blaine Gabbert also there as a backup quarterback. So like you mentioned, Kyle Trask going into the best situation possible as far as sitting back and learning from a guy like Tom Brady. He wasn't going to be a guy to go into the draft and be a guy to start day one for a team. He's going to be a little bit more of a developmental project as a quarterback down there in Florida. So for me, I'm going to give almost said the Patriots, Brady, but the Buccaneers a B, because there really wasn't anything else that they could have done. It was just solid, and they're looking to repeat this year, which is a strong possibility given, like you mentioned, the amount of talent that they brought back from that team, if not all of it. So solid B grade for Tampa Bay. Not much you're doing there as a Super Bowl champions. You're just picking with the last pick, and hopefully you add some depth to already obviously a solid roster. So with that said, that's it for the NFC South. The Atlanta Falcons, we both gave a B-. Carolina gave a B+. Miklos gave a B. New Orleans, C to a C plus for myself, and Miklos with a C plus. And for Tampa Bay, I gave them a B. Miklos, a B to a B plus. So going to be another tough division this year for any of those teams to kind of go up and take over Tom Brady and knock him off his throne there in Tampa Bay, rebuilding that franchise into something special that it obviously hadn't been since the early 2000s and winning that Super Bowl. So that is the Tom Brady effect that you speak of. With that said, we're going to take our last commercial break on the show today. It's been a long show. One more segment to go for the NFC West draft recap from the NFC. So stay right here. Be right back on Straight to the Extra Point and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Come prop up on Thrive Fantasy this season. Thrive is a daily fantasy sports and esports app for player props. With Thrive, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus only on the top-tier athletes who have the biggest impact on the game. Choose between lineups of 5 or 10 players to build your daily lineups. Each prop is assigned a fantasy value for both the over and the under based on the likelihood of it occurring. Hit the most props and rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. Thrive has over $20,000 in guaranteed prizes weekly and has awarded over $4 million to date. At the Armchair GM Sports Network, we have you covered. Use our promo code AGM Sports when you sign up today, and you'll receive an instant price match on your first deposit of $20 to $50. Again, the code is AGM Sports to receive the price match on your first deposit. Download the Thrive Fantasy app on the Apple or Google Play Store in both Canada and the United States, or by visiting their website at thrivefantasy.com for online betting. Sign up and prop up today with Thrive Fantasy.
This is the Armchair GM Sports Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the home stretch, the final four of our NFC Draft Recap show, and a long day of recording for both episodes in general. So let's jump right into the NFC West division. And this final segment today is going to be brought to you by the Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, authentic and unique Italian-style food from right here in Niagara Falls. Check out their Facebook and Instagram pages for updates and to view their adjusted hours and to try their awesome new takeout menu, Spicy Olive Bar and Grill.com. Miklos, to start off with the team that you and I have had a love affair with over the last, I guess, year and a half as far as their offseason moves and just the amount of talent that they have brought into this organization, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. And what Steve Keim has done there has been nothing short of incredible, considering where this team was when they drafted Kyler Murray first overall a few years back. And now, you know, with Cliff Kingsbury, he seems to be the real deal. Coming from college, we had a lot of question marks about him coming from Texas Tech, but they have continued to just bring in loads of talent onto this football team. And it was no different in this year's draft. Their biggest needs were tight end, cornerback, D-end, wide receiver, and running back. So how do you think the Arizona Cardinals have continued their positive trajectory here back up the NFL ranks?
I mean, it has been truly impressive how they've turned things around, and they've definitely taken advantage of some teams with trading Texans in adding just all-star caliber talent to their team. And then bringing J.J. Watt in the offseason, they just continue to get better every year. And I think they did a great job in the draft again. They add Zaven Collins, which immediately upgrades their defense, adds another pass-rushing edge-type player to their defense to help out Chandler Jones. And they're hoping Isaiah Simmons continues to develop for them. As I mentioned, J.J. Watt got added in the offseason. Then they bring in Rondale Moore, who, I mean, as if Kyler Murray needed more weapons to throw to after adding A.J. Green to an already solid wide receiving core, but Rondale Moore is brought in as well. The one shocking thing for me was that they didn't address the running back position at all in the draft. I know they added James Conner in free agency, but we've seen him be injured constantly the last couple of years. And Chase Edmonds was, I mean, so-so as running back for them last year. So I was really surprised that they didn't address the running back position more. And for that, I think it was a solid draft, but I'm going to have to give them a B to a B minus.
Okay, so a B to a B minus, probably the worst ranking that you and I have given the Arizona Cardinals for anything that they've done, but still not even that bad of a rating compared to some teams that don't even get that from year in to year out. So Again, it wasn't the greatest thing that the Cardinals have done, but I think that is reflection of how great that their past off seasons have been. The draft this year, I think, was a solid draft. Again, like you mentioned, the running back position was weird because they obviously they lost Kenyon Drake, who ended up signing with your Las Vegas Raiders. So they obviously needed some help there, but didn't end up going there other than picking up James Conner. Zaven Collins, I think, like you mentioned, solid outside linebacker. They took Simmons last year, who was kind of all over the field for them. So Isaiah Simmons as a linebacker. I mean, I think that this team is on a trajectory that's going to make them a playoff team at some point soon in the future, if not this year, with the amount of great talent that they have been able to A, draft, B, sign, or C, like you mentioned, make trades with some certain teams. But to me, Rondell Moore was the guy going into the draft that I was most excited for as far as where he was going to go. He was obviously the fastest player in the draft this year, and he ends up going in the second round, 17th overall to Arizona here from Purdue. Not a lot. You don't get to see a lot of Boilermaker kind of tape with that, but this guy was must see as far as his just breakaway speed was something that was going to be great to any team. And he goes to Arizona here, and wow, they're just loaded at that position now with a guy like Rondell Moore, DeAndre Hopkins, the veteran AJ Green over there with, and then you obviously can't count out Larry Fitzgerald, whatever he decides to do. Christian Kirk. Just they've got a loaded offense there with Kyler Murray now, and it's a scary team to watch. I hate to keep giving them a lot of credit because they're in the NFC, but again, I just think they do a solid job the last couple of years here at gaining everything that they need. They really, to me, didn't have a lot of holes to fill, but they gained a lot of just kind of luxury at this point. So for me, I'm going to give the Cardinals again like a B grade. We've typically given them in the A's, but there really wasn't anything that jumped out as far as, other than Rondell Moore. I could kind of say that was kind of where I was wondering where he was going to go, and I think that's a great landing spot for him in Arizona. Zaven Collins and Marco Wilson at a fourth round corner. They didn't have a third round pick in this year's draft, so I think it was a solid draft for Arizona as they continue to try to build back up this very tough NFC West division. You're on a B- to a B. I'm on a B for Arizona and Steve Keim with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray building this team into, I think, a playoff contender sooner rather than later. Next, we'll move on to the next team in the NFC West, and that is the Los Angeles Rams. And I have thoughts from Jordan Bologna, big LA Rams fan, says, knowing the cap situation at the beginning of the season, the Rams had better find a way to make it back to the Super Bowl, because if they don't, their roster was in for a huge shakeup, and behold, a 10-6 subpar season with nothing exciting except a divisional round exit versus the Green Bay Packers. And then he goes on to just talk about some bad things during the year, including Jared Goff was traded for Matt Stafford for first-round picks in 2022 and 2023 and a third-round pick. Free agency took its toll on this team as they lost 10 starters, and might as well have Swiss cheese at offensive line up front. Their inability to block was an issue from day one. Then he goes into the draft needs for the Rams, and linebacker. Los Angeles defense led the NFL in points and yards allowed per game last season, but the linebacker group wasn't stellar. And defensive back allowing, after losing John Johnson and Troy Hill, wide receiver Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods have both been terrific for the Rams, but both need to be healthy. Offensive line, as stated before, Swiss cheese with 2 first-round picks this year. Oh, wait, never mind. We don't have a first until 2032, it seems. To surround Stafford with some new offensive talent, the Rams used their second pick to select Louisville speedster Tutu Atwell off the board. But yes, don't find a 4.27 40-yard dash very often. He will also open up the field, as Sean McVay said he is, Deshaun Jackson Jr., who we signed also in free agency. Favorite pick, round 4, Bobby Brown III. Have fun trying to block Aaron Donald, and this guy replacing Michael Brockers and Morgan Fox could be more of a challenge for the Rams, but they took step forwards in filling that void at defensive end in the draft, bringing in aboard a big-bodied defender capable of playing any position up front. Brown coming off his best season in 2020, recording 5.5 sacks and 7.5 tackles for a loss as the leader of Texas A&M's defensive line. He displays good quickness and movement skills for a player who's 6'4", 321 pounds, possessing good length and power point of attack. Overall, I'm very excited with the season, especially for Stafford, who can come in and hopefully turn out to be the quarterback to put this team over the top and win a Super Bowl. We shall see. Thank you very much, Jordan, for your thoughts on the LA Rams. So with that said, Miklos, their biggest needs going into the draft: corner, inside linebacker, D-end, safety, offensive tackle. Obviously, they haven't had a first-round pick for a while, and they still won't with the trades that they have made. They're kind of all in on this. And with Aaron Donald, we know what he is on the defensive line. So how do you think the Rams did, and kind of looking forward to their 2021 season here?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like they haven't gotten nothing in return for these first-round picks. They have added solid players in Jalen Ramsey, Matt Stafford, just to name a couple. But yeah, it's hard to continuously add talent whenever you don't have top pick or picks in the first round of the draft. I do think they have their guy. They have the franchise quarterback, Matt Stafford. Now's the time to nut up or shut up, as they say, because, I mean, no excuse about being in Detroit, not having help. He is in a championship caliber team. He's got weapons around him. He's got a great defense behind him. Now's the time to win with Matt Stafford, and I'm sure that's what the Rams are banking on. So they get him some help with the first-round pick of Tutu Atwell to add more weapons to their offense. Cam Akers really emerged last year, especially near the end of the season. So if the rest of the wide receivers can stay healthy, it's going to be a scary offense, and hopefully having quick wide receivers and Stafford getting the ball out quick will help the O-line out in terms of not having to block so long. But, I mean, it is tough to add some impact players, but they really didn't add anyone immediately impactful, and they didn't add any O-linemen in the draft. So I think that kind of hurts their draft overall. I think this also is like a B to B minus for me.
Okay, B minus to a B. Continuing his trend with the NFC West here. Again, I'm going to go with a B minus for the Rams because, again, they just never have a first-round pick to be able to evaluate with the top-end talent. So their first pick was in the second round, 25th overall, but getting Matt Stafford pair him with Sean McVay, the offensive guru, should be big deal for the Rams as they hope to get back to the Super Bowl. But, again, nothing sticks out at the page, like Jordan mentioned. A couple of solid picks later on in the draft, Bobby Brown III and Jacob Harris at wide receiver. Just, I don't know, Tutu Atwell, again, I don't know if I would have went wide receiver for their first pick. I think they definitely could have went somewhere else in that regard, maybe even another offensive lineman at this point. But Tutu Atwell they take with their first pick. But I'm going to give the Rams a B minus because they filled a few needs, but I think that they definitely could have filled a couple of more given the fact that they had 3 fourth-round picks and they had 3 7th, so there's not much you're going to be able to do with that. But as far as not having a first-round pick forever, I think the Rams did an okay job, but just about a B minus because they really just didn't, like you mentioned, they didn't put any starters on this team from the draft. So with that being said, with Matt Stafford, I expect this team to be a lot better and hopefully competing for the NFC West title this year in another loaded division, I think, in the NFC West with a lot of good teams there. So the Rams, for me, getting a B minus to a B for Miklos. And thank you to Jordan for his thoughts. Next, we'll move on to the San Francisco 49ers, 2 years removed from being the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. And they made a big splash before the draft. They traded up to get the 3rd overall pick, Miklos, and they ended up taking quarterback Trey Lance. There was smokescreen that they were thinking about Mac Jones, who fell to New England at number 15 with that pick as well. But they ended up going with North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance with their 3rd overall pick. Their biggest needs were quarterback, offensive guard, D-tackle, safety, and wide receiver.
Yeah, and I really like this draft by the 49ers. I think the end is in sight for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Trey Lance fits more what Kyle Shanahan wants to do with his offense. He's an athletic, big-armed guy, can make a lot of things happen. I think that's an exciting pick for the 49ers, and I think the most exciting thing for the 49ers this year is having everyone back healthy. That defense got absolutely demolished last year with injuries, and I think that's ultimately what killed them overall. They had a lot of picks that they added to the defense in terms of depth, with corner depth, with Ambry Thomas and Diomador Lenoir, who I really enjoyed watching at Oregon. He's a solid corner as well. Also a safety at USC. And then they added a couple of running backs. And honestly, I think Trey Sermon is going to be an unbelievable pick for him. When he was at Ohio State, especially near the end of this past season, he was a freight train running the ball. And just to add him into the mix of already solid running back class that they have there in San Francisco, I think he might end up being one of the better picks for them at the end of the day. I think this is a really solid draft for them overall, adding a lot of depth and some immediate impact type guys. I wouldn't be surprised if Trey Lance starts by mid-season. So I'm going to give them a B+ to A-.
Okay, B+ to an A- for the San Francisco 49ers. And again, they were just, like you mentioned, decimated with injuries last year. And Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't seem to be the long-term solution there, so they draft Trey Lance with their 3rd overall pick. And I agree with you. I think Trey Sermon is one of the biggest steals in the draft, falling to the 3rd round, 25th pick in the 3rd round from Ohio State. We know what he can do as a running back, and him and Raheem Mostert could be a heck of a 1-2 punch there. And they also have Jeff Wilson and Wayne Gallman there as well. But I think Trey Sermon's going to be a very solid player, and given Mostert, his injury history, he could be the starter eventually, maybe this year, and you have a very, very young offensive starters there with Lance and Trey Sermon. So I think that this is a solid draft for Kyle Shanahan, and just continuing to fill in needs that, the depth. I kind of look at Denver like that as well, where they had so many injuries that they kind of had to rely on depth, and it just wasn't there. And I think San Francisco is another team that kind of had to fill depth in a lot of positions in case of injuries happening. They just weren't able to overcome that last year and finishing. I don't know how they ended up with 6-10 with the amount of injuries that they had, but they still managed to have a 6-win season. But this defensive line is scary good, and just the defense in general is very good. And obviously Kyle Shanahan being the offensive guy that he is, he still has some weapons like George Kittle, and Deebo Samuel is there as well. And bringing in a couple former Atlanta Falcons that he had in Mohamed Sanu as a wide receiver and Alex Mack as a center, I think is going to stabilize their offensive line as well. So I like the draft as well for the San Francisco 49ers and just their offseason in general. So I'm also going to give the Niners an A- here, because I think that what they were able to bring in, their biggest areas of concern, they filled those needs. They filled quarterback, they filled offensive guard, and even running back, I think you could have put as a need for them, given Mostert's injury history. So, and I think Ambry Thomas from Michigan is also a solid cornerback selection in the 3rd round with the 39th pick. So, given the fact that they had the extra 3rd this year and a little bit more draft capital, I think the Niners deserve an A- grade here as they continue to build back up and hopefully a less injury-depleted roster than they had last season. San Francisco, I'm giving them an A-. Miklos is giving them a B+ to an A-, and we'll see what the brass over there can do with John Lynch, as he's done. I think he's done a great job as the general manager coming over from the broadcast booth a few years ago. And last but not least, Miklos, the last team that we'll be discussing in our draft recap, the Seattle Seahawks. And with their biggest needs were offensive guard, DN, tight end, cornerback, and defensive tackle. They only had 3 draft picks, so we saving I don't know if this is the best for last or what, but they had a 2nd, a 4th, and a 6th, so not a lot of draft picks going on. Obviously, the trade last season for Jamal Adams from the New York Jets was a big price that they had to pay to get, a top-end safety like him. So what did you think of the Seahawks, given the fact that they only had a 2nd, 4th, and a 6th-round pick in this draft?
I mean, given how thin the draft options were for them, I mean, their first pick wasn't until the 2nd round, and then they had a 4th and a 6th. I think they did all right. I mean, I think, was it like 3 years ago, whenever the Saints had like 4 picks and they were just dynamite picks, all 4 of them. I think it's too much to expect hits on all these players, but I think they had some interesting picks. Dwayne Eskridge compares to Tyler Lockett, very similar, undersized but very quick, well-polished wide receiver. Trey Brown is pretty undersized, but I guess they like his mentality and how he's a scrappy type of guy. And then they add an offensive tackle to help out Russell Wilson. I mean, what can you really say about a 3-pick draft? I think given the picks, it's all right, but other than if Dwayne Eskridge can be like Tyler Lockett, then that's immediate huge hit for them. But other than that, they really didn't add anything of note to the draft. So I think this is like B-, C+.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really expect a whole lot from a team like we keep mentioning with 3 picks. So I'm going to give them a C+ to actually, I'm not, just a C+, because I think I don't know if a receiver was the spot that they really should have went with in the second round there. I think that they definitely could have upgraded at a few positions like the offensive guard position or even defensive tackle, which, again, there weren't the greatest defensive tackles available in this draft. But just picking a wide receiver just to me seemed underwhelming given the fact that they already have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And then, the running backs of Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, and Russell Wilson. You know what you're getting with that, those kinds of weapons for Russell Wilson. So, again, if he turns out to be a Tyler Lockett type, maybe that'd be great for them to move on from Tyler Lockett and have him slide into that spot. But, again, it just seemed like, I don't know, to me, given the fact they had 3 picks, maybe they end up hitting home runs like New Orleans did with 4 picks in that one draft that you had talked about. But for me, I think wide receiver just was kind of not the greatest route for them to go in, considering it was not even in their top 5 needs. So for me, I'm going to give them a C+. You're going to give them a C+ to a B-. But again, what are you really expecting from a 3-pick draft? But again, hopefully they have more picks next year to kind of make this a little bit, make this draft just seem like something of the past here that they just kind of had to get through, given the fact that they had traded draft capital to get Jamal Adams, which, again, you can't blame them for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely not. Given the impact that Jamal Adams had as soon as he arrived there and when he was healthy, which was a lot, I definitely think it was worth it. And so, you do what you can with the 3 draft picks you have, and hope that they can add some kind of contribution for this upcoming season.
And with that said, the NFC West grades: B for myself for Arizona. Miklos gave them a B- to a B. Los Angeles Rams, B- for myself, B- to a B for Miklos. A- for myself for San Francisco, and Miklos gave them a B+ to an A-. And then Seattle, I gave a C+. Miklos fringe C+ to a B-. But overall for the NFC, highest draft grades. There weren't as many high draft grades in the NFC than there were in the AFC this year. That's just the way it kind of shook out there. But as far as top grades, Miklos's top 3 were number 1, the Chicago Bears with an A grade. Next was the Detroit Lions with a B+ to an A-. And third was the San Francisco 49ers with a B+ to an A-. My 3 biggest best draft grades of the NFC went as follows, with San Francisco and the Chicago Bears tied with an A- grade. And then other than that, there were a couple of fringe B+, but the only actual B+ that I had were Carolina and Dallas. So for me, Chicago, San Francisco, Dallas, and Carolina with a tie there for third. And for Miklos, Chicago, Detroit, and San Francisco. And his other B+, straight B+ grade was the Washington football team. So with that said, Miklos, any closing remarks? We've had a long day of recording both these episodes, AFC and NFC draft grades. Just hopefully you guys enjoyed this almost 4 hours worth of coverage that we have given you today.
Yeah, I cannot wait for the season to start and see all these new players strap up the pads and get after it.
Yep, we got the schedule being announced, the full schedule being announced later tonight. We'll be sure to talk about that in the coming weeks, and as well as we transition to hopefully video podcasting with new equipment coming in and things like that. So if you have listened to both episodes today, thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it and were able to get something out of it as far as some teams that you would like and maybe some teams that you kind of didn't expect or didn't know a lot about their draft. So hopefully we were able to enlighten you guys a little bit on that. And while you're sitting at home, hopefully staying safe and not doing a whole lot other than hopefully listening in to some football talk, as Miklos and myself look forward to this show every single year. It's the 3rd year that we've been running the show on this podcast, and we always appreciate the fan input and the very in-depth analysis that you guys give us, which is why it takes so long to go through and read your great responses. So thank you to all the contributors for the NFC portion and for the AFC portion in that matter. So and for you listeners out there for tuning in and listening along for this amazingly long episode, but we love doing it. So with that said, that's going to wrap it up for our draft recap in the NFC and in general for the 2021 NFL Draft right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network, your source of North American sports coverage by sports fans for sports fans delivered to you right here in the beautiful Niagara region. As always, I'm one of your hosts of this podcast. My name is Brandon Caputo. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13_AGM with a Canadian Z. As well, you can follow my co-host Miklos at Miklos_McMaster. Miklos, thanks a lot for taking 4 hours out of your busy schedule to come on and talk some NFL draft with us. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure too, Coach. It was fantastic. What a great way to spend a day.
Oh yeah, day off for both of us, so it was a great way to spend it. A big thank you to all of the great sponsors who help put us on Sport the Network, keeping the show on the air. And finally to you viewers out there and football fans for tuning in and listening along with us to talk about your favorite teams right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network and for our NFC and AFC draft recap shows by sports fans, for sports fans. We'll talk to you guys again very soon.